Okay, so this next episode of My Little Pony is called What About Discord? Discord bonds with Twilight's friends while she's away at Canterlot, and she has some concerns. That's the episode synopsis. And I thought from that I'd make some predictions before doing the review, and then go from prediction right to the review. One way that this could go is that Discord uses his powers to force the ponies to be his friends, and then he learns a lesson on how he can't be forcing other ponies to be his friends, and friendship has to come naturally through trust and earning it. Could be an interesting lesson for him to learn, but I think a more interesting way to take this whole thing would be to have Twilight be paranoid on the level of lesson 0 and be worried that her friends aren't friends under their own free will and think they are under a spell, and then drive herself crazy with whether this is the fact or not, and then have it turn out that it was all in her head, and she has to learn a lesson in trusting Discord to be honest when he says he's reformed, and to trust her friends to be honest when they say they actually enjoy Discord's company. Oh hey, it looks like I was right about one of my guesses. This is indeed the episode where Twilight is paranoid over Discord and starts doing a little lesson 0 on us. The title itself, as well as some of the visual gags, is a reference to the Bill Murray movie What About Bob? What About Discord tells the story of Twilight becoming paranoid and jealous when Discord starts having fun with some of her friends, and she is left out. During a 3-day weekend where Twilight spends all of her time sorting books, Discord and the other members of the main 6 have fun together and create memories and a bunch of in-jokes. And as is the nature of inside jokes, only those who were there in the moment understand the nature of the jokes and why they're funny. And Twilight, as well as the audience who missed out on the 3-day weekend of fun with Discord, doesn't get the jokes and doesn't understand the sense of humor. It's something very relatable that we've all been on one side or the other. But from a writing perspective, it just sort of tells the writers, say anything you want, and as long as it's an inside joke, we won't have to explain it. It's got a lot of good references to it, and has moments that remind me of Lesson 0, Feeling Pinky Keen, and in some small ways, Too Many Pinkie Pies. In the end of all of the craziness, it turns out that this was all Discord trying to get Twilight to learn a important lesson. Or perhaps Discord wasn't up to anything and Twilight just learned a lesson that he just so happened to enjoy watching her learn it. Probably the first thing I said. Now for thoughts on the episode. Inside jokes are one of those things that if you weren't there when the events took place, you're not going to get the sense of humor. A lot like making references to obscure movies. If you haven't watched the movie, you don't get the references. If I quoted something from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you probably wouldn't get what the reference to. You would understand that I was referencing something but wouldn't understand the reference itself, nor would the joke be the same out of context as it is when presented in context. And if I made some kind of reference to some personal adventure that I had in my own past, then you would probably be scratching your head as to why that particular thing is funny. Just like if I try to retell stories told by other members of my family, I don't tell the story nearly as good as they. Inside humor is really for the few people who experienced that experience personally, not so much for the outsiders. The episode did make a number of good references, including references to Back to the Future and the painter Bob Ross. It also made a reference to the movie that the title was inspired by, What About Bob, when Discord appears dressed as Bill Murray's character, making me think that Bill Murray himself could have been a rather good Discord if had John Delancey not taken the role. Episode makes good use of potential foreshadowing if things go the way we all assume they will, and we get a certain happening in the finale episode. There was some foreshadowing in this episode that set up the upcoming events. There are also some nice blink and you miss it moments, like the Smooze being inside the bottle that Discord had tied around himself, and Starlight Glimmer making another background appearance in a very well hidden, very brief moment that was more missed than when she was hiding behind the menu in Amending Fences. Pinty doing her best Marty McFly impression made me feel like Pinty was trying to outdo Discord for wacky reference humor. It's also nice to see that all 5 of Twilight's friends now get along very well with Discord. Sure, they may not like the fact that he intentionally wanted Twilight to learn a lesson, and he encouraged them not to invite her specifically so that she could learn this lesson, but they seemed pretty fast to forgive him, and he seemed pretty fast to get over the fact that he was being left out of the Ponies Inside joke at the end of the episode. It's nice to know that they're all finally accepting each other and getting along as friends do. It should be noted that the episode description was wrong. Every place I read the episode synopsis for this said that Twilight had important business in Canterlot and was out of town. In the episode itself, she was being kept busy by her book sorting and was actually in the castle still in Ponyville. I also wonder if we'll ever get to see this Lost Weekend, if we'll ever have an upcoming episode or upcoming part of an episode where that weekend that Discord did is viewed from the other character's point of view, or if that weekend ever comes up again, so we get a better picture of exactly what happened that Twilight missed out on. It also makes me wonder, why does Twilight do her book sorting for 3 days straight with very few breaks? Why did she at no time decide to go out of the castle out of curiosity to see how things were doing, or even step out of the castle for a meal or something else of that nature? Even the most dedicated gamers and other hobby doers take at least some breaks in a 3-day time period. Also, Zatora, let's hear it for her. How about that amazing appearance? Thank you for showing up, and good night. We'll see you again for less than a minute next season. Yeah, it's said somewhat sarcastically the way I presented it, but it seems that Zatora is getting less and less airtime with every new appearance. I really don't know why they seem to be trying to phase her character out. I think it's an interesting character whose backstory, family, and history and culture could all be expanded upon, especially with what is probably a zebra village being depicted on the map. That could be a perfectly good place to have a friendship problem that the Six would have to be sent to. I also wonder if Zatora's potion that she gave Twilight actually did anything, or if Zatora just gave Twilight a placebo because she knew Twilight wouldn't leave without having some kind of potion, and she knew that if Twilight gave this potion to her friends, that what happened when confronted with the potion would have actually happened. It also makes me wonder if maybe Twilight has a bunch of inside jokes with Sunset Shimmer, as those two have had quite a few adventures in an entire world where Twilight's other 5 friends have not been present for. And if maybe when they're writing in their book back and forth to each other, if they joke about things that the other main 5 don't understand. The parts where Twilight was going crazy reminded me a lot of Lesson 0. The parts where Twilight was obsessed with studying others and learning through science and gathering data and not having faith in the stuff that she couldn't understand reminded me a lot of Pinky King, and the part about turning apples into oranges reminded me of Too Many Pinkie Pies. It was so nice to see if you were paying attention to those little subtle moments when Discord was being extra nice to Fluttershy, showing that no matter what happens, their friendship is a much more solid friendship than the friendship with the other characters. And we can add Flutter Orange to the long growing list of things that Fluttershy has been turned into, right up there with Holt and Flutterbat and Flutterguy and several other things. So good that we skipped over Twilight's book sorting. An entire episode based around 3 days of sorting 20,000 plus books would be incredibly boring. It is a bit of a shame that we missed the fun that Discord had with the other 5 on the Applejack farm. It is also a reverse of what happened in Freeze a Crowd, where in that one Discord ditched the other 5 to spend time with Twilight. In this one he ditches Twilight to spend time with the other 5. And I keep getting the feeling throughout all of these episodes that if this had not been a children's series, that Applejack would be the pony most likely to use profanity. Well, I found this to be a decent episode. Not a bad episode, but not the worst episode either. There's something about it that I can't quite place my finger on. It's like there's something off about this episode, but I don't really know what it was. I didn't enjoy it as much as I should, but I didn't hate it either. Anyhow, that's about all the thoughts I have for right Now, thank you for watching and good night.